Before we begin today, let's go to our Heavenly Father in a word of prayer. And Dale, would you mind directing us in that prayer?
Our most loving Heavenly Father, we thank Thee so much for this day and for the blessings You've given us. And we thank Thee for the good night's rest and for the privilege we have of being able to come together with brothers and sisters in Christ to share a common love for Thee. We thank Thee for Your Word and the freedom we have of being able to study that Word without fear of persecution. We ask that You would be with us as we continue our study in the book of Nehemiah, that we might have a full understanding of those things that You want us to know, so that we might be the kind of Christian You want us to be. Help us, Father, that we might always look for opportunities to teach and encourage others, that they might know the joys of being a Christian before it's everlasting too late. We ask also, Father, that You be with those of our numbers who are spiritually weak, that their faith might be increased, that they might be faithful to Thee, and we ask that You be with those of our numbers who have physical ailments, that they might be restored to their health. We're also thankful, Father, for John and for his willingness to prepare, and we ask that You be with him this morning as he directs our class, that we might be able to pay attention and that he might have a ready recollection of those things that he's prepared. We ask also, Father, that You be with us as we continue to prepare for the upcoming elections, that we might make the right decisions, that truly this country can be great once again and can continue to be free, so we can continue to serve Thee as You would have us to do so, that we would never bring any shame or reproach upon Thee or upon the church. These things we ask in Jesus Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. We left off last week. We concluded chapter 10. And so we're going to be doing the questions this morning from 10. Just take a couple of minutes to do. And then we will step into chapter 11. Chapter 11. So let's see. Let's begin there with question number 1. The list of names found in verses 1 through 27 were of those who did what?
Sealed the covenant.
Exactly, those who placed their seal upon the covenant there in verse 1. Question number 2. The people listed in verses 1 through 28 joined in what curse and an oath?
To walk in the law of God, which
Exactly.
is given by Moses, the servant of God.
That's right. You look down there in verse 29, and that's the very thing that he says there. He uses the phrasing that entered into a curse and an oath to walk in God's law, which was given by Moses the servant, okay, and to observe all that God had given them. So question number 3, to whom did the people say, supposed to be saying, they would not give their daughters as wives?
To the people of the land.
Absolutely, to the people of the land.
Or take their daughters.
That's a good point. Nor would they allow their sons to take the daughters of the land. That's right. Number 4. What did the people say they would not buy on the Sabbath or on a holy day?
Merchandise or grain.
Exactly. Merchandise from the people of the land. The New King James renders it, if the peoples of the land brought wares or any grain to sell on the Sabbath day, we would not buy it from them. Question number 5. How much did the people agree to exact from themselves yearly for the service of the house of God? Yep, 1/3 of a shekel there in verse 32. Then, question 6. The people committed to bring the firstborn of our sons and our cattle as it is written in the law, verse 35. And then the last question, who would be with the Levites when the Levites would receive tithes? Exactly. Look there in verse 38 there. Yeah. The Levites shall bring up a tenth, and the priest, the descendants of Aaron, the descendant of Aaron shall be with the Levites when that took place. All right, any thoughts or comments about chapter 10? All right, let's go ahead and step into chapter 11. And we see a couple of things here in this chapter. We'll see some establishment of leaders of sorts in Israel, in addition to the people occupying it. And while I drop things here, let's review our history for just a moment. When the people of Israel were led back into the land of Canaan, to this land, how long, and you don't have to give an exact figure, even a rough figure, but how long was it before they finally rebuilt the houses in Jerusalem. It was really the last thing they did. You think about it, when they first went in there to the land, they first thing they built was the foundation for the temple. Then they stopped. And then 16 years later, they came in and they finally rebuilt the temple. I'm not a good artist, by the way. That's why we don't have a whiteboard in the classroom anymore. Anyway, no. So they got the temple built. But then Nehemiah hears that, okay, the temple's built and so forth, but what has not yet been built after a good period of time?
The walls.
The walls, exactly. So the walls around Jerusalem, they had not been built. So they had to come in and rebuild the walls and repair the gates and get all that set up. Then after that, what did the people have to rebuild? The houses in Jerusalem. Those had to be repaired. Those had to be rebuilt. Because from what we're about to read in chapter 11, it suggests there, by the reading, that the people were not dwelling in Jerusalem. That they still were dwelling in their old lands, if you would. They had come back and gone back to the former lands. And so in the former cities and everything, they were dwelling there. But they weren't really dwelling in Jerusalem. So you would have thought the first city they would have built up would have been Jerusalem. From the temple to the walls to the houses. Because the Jerusalem was, in a sense, where God was at, as far as in his presence there in the temple. But instead, they took care of all their other houses first. And finally, the last thing that they come to is getting Jerusalem occupied. They should have had Jerusalem occupied from the get-go after the temple was built. Any thoughts or comments about that? Miss Pat?
I hate to ask this, but if they weren't dwelling in Jerusalem, who was?
The priests and the Levites. They're in the temple. Huh?
Keepers and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
the keepers, the Nethinims, and so forth. Yeah.
But not the average person.
Right. Because, let's look back for just a moment to, see if I can recall the chapter here. Go back to after they built the wall, and let's see. All right, chapter 7 is the completion. They had the wall built. Verse 4, chapter 7. Now the city was large and spacious, but the people in it were few, and the houses were not rebuilt. So they finished the walls, and they finished the gates, but there were few people living in the city of Jerusalem, and they had not gone through and rebuilt the houses. Because remember, Nebuchadnezzar stormed the city. When he finally took it, it wasn't simply the temple that he ransacked. They would have burned the houses. They would have torched the city. And so they finally, after such a long period of time, they now get to where they rebuild the houses.
If you go back to the 11th chapter, which we're in now, and you look at verses 3 through 9, you see the principal persons that resided there, which was from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin.
Yeah.
And then verses 10 through 19, 10 through 19 tells us that the priests and the Levites, as you indicated.
Dwelling in that city. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, as Dale pointed out, they're going to go through here, especially look at verse 1, and we'll read this here in a minute. They're going to cast lots, and 1 out of 10, everyone will choose 1 out of 10 to dwell in the city of Jerusalem. They're going to occupy it now. There was a few, as Dale pointed out. Now there'll be many that will be living in that city there. All right, so let's start our reading there in verse 1. And let's see, Dale, read for us, if you would, beginning in verse 1. And let's read verses 1 and 2 to get us started here.
Now the leaders of the people dwelled at Jerusalem. The rest of the people cast lots to bring 1 out of 10 to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city, and 9/10 were to dwell in other cities. The people blessed all the men who willingly offered themselves to dwell in Jerusalem.
Okay, so here we have the starting of this. You have the leaders of the people. It says they lived there, they dwelt in Jerusalem. But the rest of the people, they were to cast lots. What was essentially the casting of lots? Type of voting?
So So that God's will be done.
Yeah, what's interesting about casting of lots, even when you look to the New Testament, in part it was a normal means of gambling. Okay, as far as, something that would be a random chance. But in regards to religious matters, for instance, how did they make the decision between Matthias and the other person? They cast lots, exactly. And so, to me, the equivalent would be, I don't know, let's call it flipping a coin. And it would be the means whereby God would intervene through his providence, or like in the case of the apostles, directly. And the result would yield the proper answer. So if we're going to, let's say if we were to do it the same way as then, and we have two more men that were wanting to serve as elders and qualified, but for whatever reason, the other elders felt like only one was all that we needed. And imagine if they were to say, we're going to flip a coin and let God decide. Now, we wouldn't do that. God doesn't work that way. But that, the way they did with the apostle who would replace Judas, cast lots, and God would decide. How did they, let me think. What other instance did they determine through the casting of lots that trouble that was brought about was caused by a particular person?
Was it Ai?
No, not Ai. It could have been Ai. But I'm thinking of Jonah. I'm not sure about that. I need to go back and reread the story there. But remember when there was a great storm on the sea? They're trying to figure out, okay, which one of you angered your gods enough to bring this on us?
They cast lots to decide, and it fell on Jonah, so they threw him out.
Exactly. They knew that it was Jonah. That's right.
You're out of here.
He said, just throw me overboard. Just. All right. So that being the case, there, bring 1 out of 10. So everybody, with people, however they group themselves in the groupings of families and so forth, 1 out of 10 was to come live in Jerusalem, the holy city, and 9/10 were to dwell in other cities. And so the people did this very thing. And notice it says in verse 2, the people blessed all the men who willingly offered themselves to dwell at Jerusalem. So this, on one hand, it may be viewed as a privilege, but it was also viewed as they were giving something up. Their families and their lands in order to come and to live in this city. Again, there's going to be a lot of work. The city had been in disarray for some 70 years, not to mention the time period from their return up until now, when the houses were to be rebuilt. So it was going to take a lot of work for them to relocate to the city here. All right, any thoughts or comments?
They did get to bring their family, didn't they? These men.
We assume so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did they do this like once a month or once a year? Or?
I am assuming at the moment, unless I missed it later on in the text here, that this was a one-time
Deal.
yeah, a one-time thing in order to get the city populated. And it suggests that either no one wanted to live there, or they felt like the city was too holy for the average individual, and that's why no one had resettled it. I say no one, a few had. Maybe the people viewed their own homes as being more important. The first 16 years they went back and built their paneled houses, I believe was the phrase Malachi used, or Haggai used, in the rebuilding of their own homes before building the temple of God. Not real sure. Deb?
It was also suggested that Jerusalem was a place of great danger because
Very
all
good.
the enemies were trying to conquer Jerusalem.
And that before this point, what had not been rebuilt? The walls. So anybody who would to dwell in Jerusalem prior to the rebuilding of the walls would have been in danger, or at least felt like they were in danger. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yes, Gene?
It was also, from a management perspective, it's a good way to develop a communication system between the leaders of the people and the people who lived outside.
That's true. Enable proper leadership.
Yeah, so they had some means to administer and also to communicate with the people that lived outside the city all the time.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. All right, good thoughts there. Let's start now in verse 3. And let's go ahead and begin reading in verse 3, Miss Wilma, and read for us. I'm going to let y'all read the names this time. I gave you a break the last couple of weeks. Yeah. So, Miss Wilma, if you would, read for us verses 3 and 4.
Now these are the head of the province who dwelt in Jerusalem. But in the cities of Judah, everyone dwelt in his own possession in their city. Israelites, priests, Levites, Nephilim, and the descendants of Solomon's servant. Also in Jerusalem dwelt certain of the children of Judah and the children of Benjamin. And the children of Judah, Hatham the son of Uzziah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Amariah, the son of Shaphias, the son of Mahalah, and the children of Perez.
Okay. Let's continue there, Miss Betty, and read for us verses 5 and 6.
Messiah, the son of Brock, the son of Colbijah, the son of Haziah, the son of Adai, the son of Jair, the son of Zechariah, the son of Shilom. All the sons of Perez who dwelt in Jerusalem were 486 valiant men.
Okay. Let's take a deep breath now. And
Now it's your turn, John.
all right, let's back up here, though, for just a moment to verse 3 there and look at a couple of things here. He makes the point there, uses the term, or the phrase, these are the heads of the province who dwelt in Jerusalem. Okay, so you've got the heads of the province there. Look in the parenthetical statement as laid out for us in the New King James Version. He says, but in the cities of Judah, everyone dwelt where? Yeah, in his own possession in their cities. Israelites, priests, Levites, Nethinim, and descendants of Solomon's servants. Any thoughts about that?
Can you show me on the map where Jerusalem is in Judah?
Sure, yeah. I'm glad you asked that because we have a handy dandy map. Let's see, let's go with that one. That'll work, but I got to get it to where y'all can see it. Go it over there and bring it up there. And we'll zoom in just a little bit. Okay. The lower portion here, and it's not really labeled on this map very well, because this is the kingdom of Solomon during his time. But here, identify Jerusalem, just a little bit north of this would have been, not really here, this was more of, they had to contend with the Philistines, Philistia, in this area here. But right in this region, south, would have been the region known as Judah. Yeah. And I do believe, let me see if I can load up I think I have a divided kingdom map. Yeah, let's bring this one up.
I was just wondering the distance is what I was really wondering about.
Sure, that makes sense. Where'd you go? There it is. Now, this one right here will show us the divided kingdoms a little bit better. And it's not, I've got a better one back in the back class that we used back there. But this lower region here would have been Judah. And so what we just read there within the text suggests, but in the cities of Judah, everyone dwelt in his own possession in their cities. So either it's saying that the people who lived in Judah were allowed to stay here in Judah and live in their own homes, and everybody else who lived northward had to send representatives down here to the city of Jerusalem. It would suggest that. It would suggest that if I read it correctly, but of course I may be looking at it a little bit askew there. Any thoughts or comments?
Has Jerusalem ever moved from that spot closer to the coast?
No.
Or has it always been by the Salt Sea?
It's always been right here, right in this area. And Jerusalem's more up on a mountain, kind of a plateau area. So although you hear about people saying going up to Jerusalem, it wasn't because they were traveling northward per se, but it was because of the way the city itself was built or where it was located at. Jerusalem's never been here. The capital when David took the throne, when David took the throne, he put the capital there in Hebron. Okay. But after about 6.5 years or so, he went and took the city of Jerusalem, which was occupied by the Jebusites. And once he took that city there from them, he made that essentially the capital city, moving his household and the tabernacle and everything to there. And that's why the temple ended up being built in Jerusalem. So, it's always been there. Just right near Bethel. And
How far did they walk to go fishing? Or, I mean, I always pictured it for some crazy reason. I stuck it over there closer to the Mediterranean.
When you think about the time period of Christ and his apostles.
That's what I'm thinking about.
All right. This right here would have been the Sea of Gennesaret. Or the Sea of Capernaum?
Problem.
It had a couple different names to it, and more than names depended on what side of the lake you were at. Okay. Matter of fact, Genessa is named after the lake of Gennesaret, which would have been that body of water right there. And so Jesus spent some time in a city off the coast here, and so that's why they would have been there fishing. So yeah, and they traveled. I mean, we're not talking about a vast area. I don't have a scale or a key or whatever you call it, legend that is. I don't have a legend on this particular map here. But we're not talking about a large area. We're talking maybe a day's travel, depending on where you're heading to. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Well, the scale I've got shows Jerusalem about 40 miles from Mediterranean.
About 40 miles from Mediterranean?
40 miles.
Okay, yeah. That'd be about right. As a matter of fact, let me bring up one more handy dandy device here. Let's see. Y'all ever heard of a thing called Google Maps? Yeah. Where did it go? There it is. And we'll bring this up just so you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. And we'll punch in the city of Jerusalem in Israel. Okay, and let's collapse this and turn on the satellite view and get rid of we'll leave the labels there for now, I guess. Now get rid of the labels. And then what we'll do is we'll pan up a little bit, and there's an actual satellite view of the very place that we're talking about right now. And make sure we're working good over here. And so when you look, and you look right here, A marks the spot of modern day Jerusalem. And so this right here would be the Mediterranean Sea. This right here would be the Salt Sea. And this right here would be the lake where Jesus went there and where he taught from. And if you look right here, this amount of width right over here, and amount of this right over here would be about 20 miles. So what Gene said would be very, very accurate. As far as 40 miles from the area here. There we go, this area. So I mean, it's very, very, very. Well, that's what it was. I mean, we're not talking about vast distance there. Now they didn't have cars, granted, and so traveling 40 miles on like some sort of animal or something or another would still take a while.
Donkeys.
But, yeah.
Camels and donkeys mostly don't.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to throw another wrench in the works.
Okay.
Where's the mountains that Jerusalem is located on? This is not easy access and travel.
Well, they had roads and stuff going up. I mean, they had well-established roads to that region, even during the time period that we're looking at. There would have been roads coming in and out of the city of Jerusalem. I was looking to see if maybe this thing offered us kind of a topographical, but I don't see that right offhand there.
That's quite all right. I took up enough time. I'm fine now. I just had to get this.
Are you good?
Yep, I'm good.
Actually, I'm not picking on you at all. I think it's interesting to go back and look at the geography of the time period, and it's very interesting.
And what these men are having to do, it just.
Yeah. Imagine if, people work for companies today, and a company's going to move, and they'll say, we need some of y'all to move with us. In effect, that's what they were doing. So, but it suggests here, like I said a while ago, not to repeat too much, but it suggests that in the cities of Judah, everyone dwelt in his own possession in their cities. It may be that the people who lived in the region of Judah were close enough that they didn't have to have representatives in the city of Jerusalem itself as the other tribes up north, people who lived up farther north. But I'd have to go back and I didn't catch that earlier. I'll need to look at some of my resources to say how they look at that. Any thoughts or comments? Adele, you got anything in addition with that?
No.
Okay. All right, let's see. Let's continue on here now. So, also in Jerusalem dwelt some of the children of Judah and some of the children of Benjamin. The children of Judah, he lists several of them right here. One of which was the son of Uzziah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Amariah, the son of Shephatiah, the son of Hallel, and of the children of Perez. Now this is important. If you go back, who was Perez? Does anyone remember?
Back and close to Adam, I think, way back.
Well, there was a Perez father back. Okay. But let's see if we've got a good little handy-dandy resource here with this one right here. The reason I'm putting Perez as one of the offsprings of Judah. And I can't remember which one specifically, but let's see.
Yeah, one of Judah's twin sons.
Thank you. One of his twin sons there. Okay. Twin son with Zariah of Judah by Tamar, an ancestor of the two families of Judah, the Hezronites and the Hamulites, etc. So if it's the same Perez, then it would have been one of the two sons of Judah there from Tamar.
It's in Matthew 1:3. It's in the
The-
Judah begat Perez.
Yes, in the genealogy there.
Yeah, it's in the
Exactly.
genealogy.
Yeah. All right. So now the reason why I kind of bring up the significance of that is because then when you look at verse 5, or actually verse 6, all the sons of Perez who dwelt in Jerusalem were 468 valiant men. If it's the same Perez, that's who they're identifying with. Yes, Miss Wilma.
I didn't.
Oh, you had to look like you had.
Well, I'm just thinking that our family, well, we're over 200 and we're expecting 3 more.
Oh,
Ours is going pretty fast.
Yeah, that's true. It could be Perez.
See, in this class, you don't have to raise your hand. If you look like you have a thought, I'll call on you.
It's dangerous. You better look down if you don't want to say anything.
And you have another listing here, and Messiah, the son of the Baruch, the son of, and these are not, the listings here are not intended to represent, here are all the people that went. It's the ancestry of the particular one that went. And Messiah, the son of Baruch, the son of etc., all the way down to the son of Shiloni. And then he says, of the sons of Perez who dwelt at Jerusalem, there are 468 valiant men. And this goes back to the point that Dell made a while ago. It would have been viewed as a very dangerous place to live, even with the walls up, because the surrounding people who tried to, think about the ones who tried to halt the rebuilding of the temple and the rebuilding of the wall. There were still foreign nations scattered around them, or foreign people, I should say. Israel never got the nation back, the land of Canaan. The best they got back were their cities and Jerusalem. And they never got the full nation as in the days of David and Solomon, and even after the division. So they were still not a dominant nation, but people feared them because they had a history there. Think about the number of years they had in that land. And so people were against the rebuilding of this, and they would make any attempt to get the king over here, over in Persia, to turn against these people. And so it would make sense that they would refer to the men who chose to live in Jerusalem as being valiant men.
Even if you think back, when they were building the walls, the people who were building the walls kept their weapon with them
That's right.
as they were building them.
Exactly. And the fellow, his name skipped my mind right offhand, but they made several attempts through negotiations to stop it, and then they resorted to brute force, and the people defended themselves, or stood ready to defend themselves. All right, any thoughts? Sanballat.
Sanballat.
That's right. Thank you. And there was another one. He's one I was trying to remember. And I think Shalmaneser, and wasn't him, a Sanballat. Yeah. All right. So with that being said, let's start there in verse 7. And Miss Karen, would you mind reading for us verses 7 and 8?
And these are the sons of Benjamin. Salu, the son of Meshullam, the son of Joed, the son of Pedaiah, the son of Kolasha, the son of Messiah, the son of Ithil, the son of Josiah, and after him, Gabai, Sally, 920 and 8.
Okay. So let's pause there for just a moment. Take a deep breath. Here you have the descendants of Benjamin. And so it's interesting, the first batch were the descendants of one of the sons of Judah, Perez, and these right here now are the listing of the descendants of the son of Benjamin. 928 in total. All right, any thoughts or comments? All right, Danielle, let's come over to you, and if you would read for us verses, let's read verses 9, 10, and 11.
Joel the son of Zechariah was the overseer, and Judah the son of Sanah was second over the city. Of the priest, Jediah the son of Joab and Jachrin, Sapha the son of Hilkiah, the son of Mesham, the son of Zadok, the son of Moriah, the son of Atub, was the leader of the house of God.
All right, thank you. Let's come up here to verse 9. He mentions Joel as being the overseer, and his son's name was Judah, and he was second over the city. There's not a lot of detail as to exactly what their roles were, but it does suggest a leadership role. Of the priests, he mentions a couple of them here. I find that name, Joy-Rib, quite interesting. Who would put the name Rib at the end of their kid's name? Joy-Rib. But when you read down through here and all the listings there within this name, you come to him, Sariah, the son of Hilkiah, etc., was the leader of the house of God. This more than likely was what position? More than likely the high priest. Okay, more than likely the high priest. All right, any thoughts? Okay, let's continue our reading here now, and let's start in verse 12. Brother Gene, and if you would read for us there, beginning in verse 12, and let's read through verse 14.
And the brethren did the work of the house for 822. Adaliah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Pedaliah, the son of Amziah, the son of Zechariah, the son of Pashur, and the son of Malchiah. And his brethren, chief of the farmers, 242. And Amashai, the son of Azareel, the son of Ahaziah, the son of Meshillemoth, the son of Heman. And their brethren, mighty men of valor, 128. And their overseer was Zebdiel, the son of one of the great men.
Okay. All right, let's come back there for just a moment there to verse 12 there. Now he identifies the brethren here who did the work of the house were how many in number?
822.
Yeah, 822 of them. And then he mentions a couple other. You got Adai, the son of Joam, but Adai, focus on him. He says there in verse 13, and his brethren, heads of the fathers' houses, were 242. Why do you think, and this is somewhat speculative, but I think there's precedent within the scripture, within the study of Nehemiah to justify this. Why do you think it was so important that they give the genealogy or the ancestry of these men? Why to go in such great detail and say Bob, the son of Bill, the son of Sam, the son of Job, the son of this, the son of that, served in this capacity? What would have been the significance of doing
They have
that?
certain skills.
Okay, could have been a skilled base.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what else?
If you're starting over, you better start with it correct, or it's going to never be right.
Correct in what fashion?
Bloodlines.
Okay.
It's, I don't know how to put it.
Think about the number of times, and that's, I think that may be part of what we're looking at here. The reason why they did the detail to this. Ezra gave a listing of everybody that came back so that the priests, those who would serve in the temple, would be proper priests, proper descendants of Levi. And then Ezra, or Nehemiah, as we were reading through that, he went through the same list again. And so it may be that the reason why the Nehemiah went to such great detail is so that the people would know that these men who served were authentic, were part of the proper lineage. And it was also a way of identification. Nowadays, when you introduce yourself to somebody, you give them your first and your last name. And in our culture, the last name suggests the family that you come from. But what was interesting is I did a little research a while back, and not every nation adopts that practice. Not every nation will have the family name second and their proper name first, as in John Duvall. There are some nations where it would be John of the family of, or the son of, different things like that. The idea, in our culture, whenever a woman gets married, typically she takes her husband's last name. But that's not the same case in all cultures because of the way they identify themselves. And so this is not an uncommon way of identifying who you are. Any thoughts? I had one more thought there, an example of that, but I forgot now which one. Well, I want to say over, well, I don't remember, so I won't even try it right now. But there are countries that you would identify although the wife would marry someone, she would still be identified whenever she would introduce herself as the daughter of whoever she was born to. Yeah. So, and then let's see there in verse 13. Mentions the heads of the fathers' houses were 242, and then Amashai come down following the list there, and their brethren, mighty men of valor, were 128. Their overseer was Zadil, the son of one of the great men.
It's Hagdolin, Hagdolin.
Yes.
He was her father.
He was their father, going back father there in the text there.
He was father of Zedil.
Oh, there in verse 14.
Uh-huh.
Okay. See, I like shorter names. It's just so much easier on people who you meet. But even then, you cannot guarantee that people will pronounce your name right. You've been raised with it. It looks easy enough, and then you give your kid a name that's spelled completely different, so that throws the world off for a while. Anyway, any thoughts or comments about this? Now, we're just going through some history here, some listing of people who were put up positions of leadership there within the camp of Israel, within the city there of Jerusalem. So with that being said, let's start there in verse 15. And Sister Stewart, would you mind reading for us, give you a couple of names here in 16 and 17,
I think she
please?
just left.
What's that?
I'm with you.
Well, that's a good point there.
What'd you say?
She just left.
Oh.
Sister Stewart just left. Yeah, let's start 15 there, yeah.
15, that's also of the Levites, Shimei, the son of Hashul, the son of Azaracham, the son of Hashabiah, the son of Bunai, Shabbathiah, and Zozabad, of the heads of the Levites, had the oversight of the business outside of the house of God.
See, that was good. It's like taking off a Band-Aid. You just got to get it done. Just take it off. Let's continue reading there. And Miss Maxine, read for us verses 17 and 18, please.
And Nathan, the son of Micah, the son of Zebediah, the son of Asaph, was the principal to begin the thanksgiving and prayer, and backed them up. And the second among his brethren, and Ajay, the son of Shamu, the son of Galah, the son of Jeduthun. All the Levites in the holy city were 284.
Okay. So let's come back there for just a moment to verse 15. And just a couple listings here. You have listing of the Levites. You have the fellow by the name of Shimei, and follow the lineage down there. And then you have Shabbathai and Josabad of the heads of the Levites. They had, as the New King James renders it, oversight of the business outside of the house of God. So you had the high priest who would tend to the leader or be head over the affairs inside the house of God. these individuals more had the oversight outside within the realm of the city there. And then verse 17, he lists Mattani, the son, and he continues there, the leader who began the thanksgiving with prayer. And then you had the next individual, and Abda there, and the son of, just again mentioning leaders. And it seems kind of tedious, of course, to read through the names, but these were real people with a real lineage, and they served a purpose there of leadership within the city of Jerusalem. Again, it had sat empty and very little used for many years. When they're done, the city of Jerusalem will be as it should be. Any thoughts? All right, let's see. Let's pick up there in verse 18. And Miss Maxine, if you would read for us.
I just read.
Well, I liked it. I want to hear it again. No. Start at verse. If you would read for us 19 through 21. And that was an easy one, too. Go ahead, Miss Maxine. Or Miss Florence.
All the Levites in the holy city were 284. Moreover, the porters, Atkub, Talmon, and their brethren that kept the gates were 172. And the residue of Israel of the priests and the Levites were in all the cities of Judah, every one in his inheritance. Brother?
And 21, please.
But the Nethema dealt in Opel, and Zihah and Gispa were over the
Nethinim.
Okay. See, she didn't start in verse 18 after all. Okay. Look there in verse 19. All right, you have the gatekeepers. They were very important to the security there of the walls around the city, and their brethren who kept the gates. There had 172 of them. That was their responsibility. Then the rest of Israel, of the priests and Levites, were in all the cities of Judah. Going back to the map we showed up a while ago there. Everyone in his inheritance. So there were those for certain who dwelt in the city. Others were allowed to live within their own possessions as long as it was in the region of Judah. What did we say the Nethinims were a while back?
Givers.
Pardon?
I think givers.
They helped the Levite. They helped the
It kind
Levites.
of, kind of assistance to the
Assistance,
Levites
that's a
there.
good
Yeah,
word.
if you were to look up the definition here, let me come back down to where we were at. There in verse 21. If you get dizzy looking at fast scrolling text, don't look at the screen right now. All right. Now, bring up the definition here of this Hebrew word. He says here in this dictionary, it says temple slaves assigned to the Levites and priests for service in the sanctuary. Very specific task there they were charged with. But what is interesting about this, when you come back here to our text, it says that they dwelt where? In the little city of Ophel. And Zihah and Gizpah were over the Nethinims. They were the ones in charge of those who would assist the priests and Levites, or more, like the one definition said slaves. And I'm not so sure, if it was slaves as in...
Servants.
As servants, yeah. I think that would be a better rendering of it.
Were they voluntary servants?
That I don't know.
They were exempted from taxes.
They were exempted from taxes? Okay.
So
I would almost think that they were more of a... I don't know. I was going to say, I would almost think they were kind of a race of people, but as in like someone taken from another country. But I'm not positive. For them to be where they were going to be at, they'd have to be Jews. And so it very well could have been a chosen profession they went into, or by family profession that they were born into, possibly.
Mine is probably origin of Dibonites, and then Solomon's slaves.
We read something earlier that mentioned from the house of Solomon. That could have been as well.
Next First Kings 9.
Okay. Go ahead.
His commentary suggests that Ophel is not a city, but it's actually located on the walls of Jerusalem, and this is where they resided because they were the servants of the temple.
Okay. The footnote I've got on that kind of goes along with that. It says a name for the whole southeastern hill of Jerusalem. Very good point. Okay.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that size of the area that was inside the walls?
Within the walls?
Yes.
Well, let's see. I have a map for that. Let me see. We are looking at the time period of Nehemiah, aren't we? All right. Nehemiah, when he built the walls, let's bring this chart up here real quick. And you'll recognize this. I think it's in the back of the question booklet that we passed out. Look at this one here. Well, the scale of feet shows about 1,000 feet there. You'll notice that. And so that being the case, this was the city of David. This was addition by Solomon. This would have been addition possibly by Hezekiah. And then this would have been a possible later expansion, but not during the current time period. We're talking maybe about 100 years or so after where we're currently at. So this would have been, by this scale right there, over 1,000 feet from maybe the widest point to the widest point. You know, yes. Is it in the back of our booklets? Okay.
It's in the back. I didn't get other than 1,000 feet.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about a large area. Maybe 4 football fields wide, 5, you know, I'm guessing. Any thoughts? Okay.
I was gonna ask you, back in the verse 2,
Mm-hmm.
talks about all those going back to their own cities, their own possession, includes the priests and the Levites. And then down in verse 20, the resident of the priests and the Levites were in the cities of Judah, everyone in his own inheritance. I didn't think the Levites had an inheritance.
Well, the Levites were given cities in each of the tribes. You know, whenever they divided the land, the Levites themselves did not have an inheritance.
Yeah.
But every tribe had to give a certain number of cities to the Levites for them to dwell in. And so it could be that that's what it's referenced there. Not so much a land, but maybe going back to the map of the region of Judah, there were cities throughout Judah where the Levites would have dwelt prior to their capture. And so that's probably where many of them had made their homes when they came back. Again, not a land promise, not that type of inheritance, but maybe cities that had been lived in before by the priests of former generations, possibly.
Yeah, it does say the priests and the Levites were in all the cities
Yeah.
of Judah.
Yeah. And so all throughout the region, maybe every city allocated space for the priests and the Levites. Yeah. Because we think about the city of Jerusalem being the center point, but even throughout the history of the people, there were priests and Levites who lived throughout the regions there, not simply just in the city of Jerusalem. You know, they would have been throughout the whole nation. Even after the division, there would have been priests and Levites called up in the where Jeroboam led the rebellion and 10 tribes went with him. There would have been priests and so forth called up within that land region. All right, any thoughts? Okay. All right, and if you saw on the map, I've already brought it down, but it did identify the area of Ophel, or the possible area of Ophel there, where the Nethinims were. All right, so any thoughts before we continue? All right, let's continue our reading here, and Miss Pat, if you would, start with this in verse 22, and let's read down through verse 24, please.
Also, the overseer of the Levites at Jerusalem was the son of Ani, the son of Hashabiah, and the son of Mathaliah, and the son of Micah, and the sons of Asaph, the singers in charge of the service of the house of God. For it was the king's command concerning them that a certain portion should be for the singers, a quota day by day. Pethaniah, the son of Meshezabel, of the children of Zerah, the son of Judah, was the king's deputy in all matters concerning the people.
Okay. All right. Did good with those. All right, now come back up to verse 22 there. Notice here that he makes the point in looking at the overseers of the Levites there at Jerusalem. We list some names that we've seen throughout the several of the genealogical listings we've read through here. But focus on the overseer of the Levites at Jerusalem was Uzzi. Okay? Follow him down there. Then you've got, and the sons of Asaph. You have the singers in charge of the service of the house of God. And then it was the king's command concerning them that a certain portion should be for the singers, a quota day by day. What do you think he means here, a certain portion?
Big share.
Exactly, their share, a way of providing for them. Certain quota day by day. And this was the king or the one who is overseeing the city. It was their charge as this was being dispersed. And then he says in verse 24 there that Pethiah of the children of Zerah, the son of Judah, he was the king's deputy in all matters concerning the people. You know, this is one of those readings where there aren't many what can I take home and make use of in my daily life lessons. But it is biblical history. And it really helps us see a lot that went on during this time period. All right, any thoughts? All right, let's see. We're nearly completed. Trying to decide if I just want to give the rest of this to Miss Phyllis back there. 25. Tell you what, Miss Phyllis, go ahead and read for us verses 25 through 30. And just act like you know what you're doing when you say the names there. Nobody know the difference.
Yeah. Now as for the villages with their fields, some of the sons of Judah lived in Kiriath Arba and its towns, in Dibon and its towns, in Jekabzeel and its villages, and in Jeshua, in Moladah, and Beth Pelech, and in Hazar Shual, in Beersheba and its towns, in Ziklag, in Nikona and its towns, and in En-Rimmon, in Zorah and in Jarmuth, Zanoah, Adullam and their villages, Lachish and its fields, Azekah and its towns. So they encamped from Beersheba as far as the valley of Hinnom.
Okay. And again, we're just looking at a disbursement where individuals lived throughout this region as they're setting everything up and in place there. And then let's start there in verse 31, and let's take it to the end. Dale, we're back up to you.
Also the children of Benjamin from Geba dwelled in Michmash, Asia, and Bethel, and their villages, in Anathoth, Nob, Ananiah, and Hazar, Ramah, Gideam, and Hadid, Zebulun, Nabalat, and Lod, Ono, and the valley of Craftsmen. Some of the Judean divisions of Levites were in Benjamin.
Yeah. So again, it's more just the disbursement where people were living at. On a side note, this is where Sears began, the Valley of Craftsmen. It had the specialty of a tool store, and
Guaranteed for now.
yeah. Actually, Valley of Craftsmen probably would have been reference to what? That very thing.
Where they build.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and again, like I said, there's nothing real lesson worthy, if you would, from this, but it's great Bible history, you know, and it kind of gives you an insight as to where they lived at. And again, we have finally reached a point in this where Jerusalem is as it should be. The people have returned. The city is now populated. Worship of God is now on an ongoing basis. Passover has been observed. The covenant's been reestablished with the people. The people have sealed the oath, the cursings and the oath. You know, everything now has been done. And next week, when we continue this in chapter 12, we're going to look at the register of the priests and Levites. So we've got a few more names to read through. But then we come down to verse 27. You have finally the dedication of the wall. And then from there, we have just one more chapter in the book of Nehemiah. And a little bit more history there. Once we're done with the book of Nehemiah, I'd kind of like to see us step into Esther for a short time. it will be out of place a little bit as far as chronologically the events in the book of Esther, but it'll still give us a neat little insight into the Persian reign at that time period. Any thoughts or comments? All right, so next Tuesday morning, let's plan to do the questions for chapter 11, and we'll step then to chapter 12. Appreciate everyone being here this morning. If there's any that we need to keep in our prayers, let's continue to do that. Danielle, it's good to have you with us this morning, although she returns back to work next week if all reports of the doctor goes well. Hopefully she's got rid of the pain in her back and everything will be good. There will be no Scripture Way broadcast tonight. We will resume that next week. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, Gene, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we are grateful to Thee for this time we've been able to come together as Thy children to study from Thy Word. And we learn from how Thou hast worked with Thy people over time, and Thou hast blessed them when they are obedient and punished them when they sin. We pray that those lessons may be evident to us as we live our lives here, and we pray that Thou will forgive our sins. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.